PAX attendees, please welcome to the stage, MatPat.
Hello, PAX! Welcome to my story time! Awesome. Hey guys, thank you for being here. Welcome to PAX. My name is Matthew Patrick. Yeah, it is! It is! Good, I'm glad we're starting off with things that everyone knows. We're starting off and we're gonna build. My name is Matthew Patrick, better known online as MatPat, and I am probably best known online as creating a thing. And that thing was a bunch of YouTube channels called Game Theory. Film Theory. Yeah? Who knows Game Theory? Okay, so a couple of you. That's good. But for those of you who don't know or might not be aware, game theory really at its core is founded in my love of gaming, and specifically education through gaming, right? So when we would do episodes about things like Minecraft Diamond Armor and how much Minecraft Diamond Armor would actually be worth, it is an opportunity for me as a content creator to look at this video game that I love, but also talk about, like, hey, gemology, learning about cut, caret, clarity. Let's talk about how you evaluate a gemstone, cool stuff like that. Or taking a more extreme example, like calling Mario a communist. Right? Controversial stance, MatPat. It's controversial, but through this video, right, I'm able to talk about really cool topics like political movements and important points in world history. Stuff that would otherwise be pretty boring and normal and dry, but because it's told through Mario, it's kind of fun and cool. Or, for instance, I could talk about other things, like if I were to talk about...
Yeah! Yeah! Oh my god.
We're just gonna skip that one.
Oh my god. Oh my god!
Pass.
Wow.
Educational content, ladies and gentlemen. Education takes many forms. You can learn about a lot of different stuff, about a lot of different body parts. I like that people in the front here are saying, like, we needed the sequel to the boobs episode. You do realize that the Luigi's penis episode was the sequel to the boobs episode. Equal opportunity. At its core, though, right? Suffice it to say, game theory was all about education, and it's the thing that I am most proud of, probably the thing I'm most known for. But what's been really interesting is as I've kind of closed off my retirement arc here on the channel. So for those of you who don't know, I recently handed off the channel to a new set of creators, which thank you. Which I'm so excited about, and they're doing amazing work, and I'm so proud to watch them grow and make it into what they have always envisioned it to be as a new voice of creators. It's great, but the 10-week lead up to that transition has been wonderful to look back on my history on the channels, as a creator, and my history with video games. And for the first time ever, I came to this realization that every single important moment in my life has been tied to video games in some way. I always knew that I loved video games and that I enjoyed them, but when I actually stopped and looked at what are these pivotal moments in my life, video games were always there, which I thought was really interesting. That's one of those things that I wanted to talk about today. And so even in my earliest of early days, right? So that insert obligatory awe here. Thank you. That's me. This is not me as a gamer yet. I didn't have enough muscle control in my hands at the time. But as I was digging through old photos to use for this presentation, I'm like, oh, like these are fun. And I especially like the one on the right there, right? Your left, because it's me practicing my YouTuber react face before YouTube became a thing. Like, oh, slap some clickbait green text off to the side there.
Yes, of course.
You've got yourself like a Mr. Beast thumbnail. That's great. But here I am on Christmas morning. I actually, I actually love the fact that the two faces are identical to each other. Like, it's the same face made like a couple years apart. Again, pioneering YouTube thumbnails before YouTube was a thing. But yeah, you could tell that I was a hardcore gamer guy because I had a Game Gear, which had better graphics than the Game Boy. It came in color, you know, so like, right, I know, I was fancy schmancy with that, I know, right? So that was my earliest memories. And even like when you think about what is your first ever core memory as a kid, right? Like what is the first thing that you as a child remember? My first ever memory as a human being, as an individual that exists in the world, was video gaming. Specifically, it was me in my childhood home, sitting on the floor of the house, playing Castlevania and fighting Dracula. I was like maybe like 6, 7 years old at the time, and my mind was blown by this boss battle. For those of you who aren't, you know, half past dead or were born in this millennia, here's a little clip of what it looks like here. So here we go. Got a boss. Boom! And his head pops off. It popped off. It's great. It blew my childhood mind. I'm like, oh my gosh! I ripped this guy's head until it popped off. That was horror gaming in the 1980s, by the way.
Yeah.
That was terrifying. That was not age appropriate for me. That was instrumental in my childhood. I whipped him until his head popped off. Although to be fair, for as traumatic as that was for me as a kid, my child, Ollie, he's 5 years old. Shout out to Ollie. He asks me not infrequently to recount for him the story of Five Nights at Freddy's.
Oh my God, of course.
You know, right, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, right? It's literally like, oh, let me tell you the story about like the animatronic murder pizza restaurant and the dead kid stuffed inside the suits. We heavily censor what's going on there. He has these questions about like, why doesn't Glamrock Freddy have his head? And it's like, you and me both, bud, I don't know. That's what we're trying to figure out. That's what everyone wants. So yes, horror gaming kind of lives with all of us. So that was my earliest memory, right there, sitting in the living room playing that game. But it wasn't just horror and monsters and gore and traumatic childhood memories. It also brought me to the partnership with my wife. You know, I met my best friend, my partner Stephanie. Yeah, I met Stephanie through gaming too. So basically we were both in college, and we both were forced to take a math credit, and neither of us wanted to take a math credit, because why would you take a math credit if you didn't have to? And so, I like math, no, don't get me wrong, I love math, but it's like, oh, you can take three-dimensional calculus in college. It's like, no one wants that, like, get out of here. And so instead, we didn't know each other at the time, but we had both independently heard that there was this Easy A course called Comp Sci 4, video game programming. And we're like, oh, Easy A plus video games, sign us up. And so, you know, we both signed up for it. And the first day you're always a little bit nervous because you're like, oh, did the older kids like troll me? Is this some sort of hazing thing or whatever? So you're sitting in class and then the professor walks out in his Hawaiian shirt. And you're like, oh yeah, Easy A course. Like, you can tell. It's not like one of the stuffy professors with the elbow patches and stuff. It's like, oh, he's the Hawaiian shirt guy. This is awesome. But Stephanie and I have a chronic problem called we are broken. You've heard of type A personalities, but we are type A plus personalities. And so while the rest of the class is just coasting through this thing, making video games that are like, press X to win. You know, here's Steph and I competing for the best game in the class every week because they would give out an award. And we're making stuff like 5 levels of a breakout game, and then at the end there's like a boss battle. And you're like, a breakout game? Like with balls hitting blocks, having a boss battle? But that is how upset we are. Like, that is how crazy we are. Like, you've heard of the try guys. We are like the try hard guys. It was bad, right? So at the end of the semester, when we had to partner up for the final project, we knew that it made sense for us to do it together because we wouldn't let down the other person. We worked hard, right? And so the rest of the class literally did like one whole golf game where the ball goes into the hole and it's like, whoa, cool. Meanwhile, we did something called the Epic of Stew, which was, you know, may or may not have been likely inspired by the original Legend of Zelda. You might have seen some of our source material. It no longer exists, sadly, because it was programmed in Java, but this is actually taken from the initial PowerPoint presentation that we had to kind of pitch out to the class of what this thing was. Here's the help file. It was a like 5-level epic, because again, true to form, try hard. 5-level epic with scrolling backgrounds based on your movement and multiple ways to attack and 8 different enemy types, all with different attack patterns, a multi-phased boss battle, different endings, like Eiji Aonuma, eat your heart out.
Yep.
We did more than a Zelda game does, like, really. And to cap it all off, the craziest thing about it, I think, and the thing I'm most proud of, is at the end of it all, you save the princess from this like evil basilisk, and then you enter a dating simulation.
Of course.
Because it's not just enough to rescue the princess, my friends, you have to woo her too, right? All this talk about, strong female representation in gaming and how do we make it more accessible to people. Epica Stu's been waiting there the whole time, guys. We were making that curve happen back in the day. And it's funny too, because that was our first ever project together. Right, that was the first ever large-scale thing that we'd ever worked on together, and we like to say that we've been working on group projects together ever since. Where we started with a video game, it became let's start a channel together, let's get married, start a business together, let's have a kid, and we've been doing all these group projects. But even in our proposal, video games had an impact, right? So while we were really kind of low income, living in New York, I was a starving actor, Steph was a starving college student in grad school, and we could have taken the money that we had saved up to buy a ring for her, which would have been kind of the normal way to do things. Instead, we decided to buy this.
Cute.
We bought this. We called it Ruby because it was red. It was our Ruby, and then because it was a we called it our Ruby Wing. I make myself sick sometimes. I'm so sorry. If any of you puked in the seat, I apologize to the cleanup crew. That is totally valid. That's disgusting. Anyway, yeah, so that was our Ruby Wing, and we played through all of Kirby's Epic Yarn. Was our first ever game together.
Aww.
But Nintendo obviously had a huge impact in my life, right? I talked about how Nintendo was my first ever system. We bought this Ruby Wing for our engagement. It was really foundational. Even my childhood bedroom was all Nintendo themed, right? Like I remember I had these ugly lime green walls, which suddenly makes me realize that's probably where the green text of all our thumbnails comes from. Subconsciously seeded in during my childhood, very clearly. But we had these lime green walls everywhere. And my room was decked out in all this Mario paraphernalia, right? So you had a Mario lamp, you had like a Mario thing over here, Mario stuffed animal, and then on my bedspread, just a giant Mario face. Just like staring up with his like Italian plumber grin, watching me as I sleep. And in retrospect, it's scary. It was probably my first ever jump scare. Again, the childhood trauma starts coming out and you're like, oh, that's where that came from. But yeah, Mario would just stare me in the face the entire time, which is actually one of the reasons why is such a huge deal for me personally to have gotten the chance to meet Shigeru Miyamoto during my time as host of the channels of Game Theory, right? To be fair, it was for a pretty lousy brand deal. I met him for the game Star Fox Zero. Anyone remember Star Fox Zero?
Yeah.
No, you don't. No one remembers Star Fox Zero. There's no wooing for Star Fox Zero. It was basic, for those of you who don't know, right? Star Fox Zero was like, hey, you know that franchise that's really good that we don't use at Nintendo all that often? Well, we're giving you a new Star Fox game. And everyone's like, yeah! And then they're like, but hold on, we're Nintendo. We're gonna make this virtually unplayable. By making you use the Wii U control pad as a separate thing, and so now you're watching two screens at once, and wow, doesn't it make it so hard to aim? And it's like, yes, this is a terrible game design. Here's the godfather of modern gaming with Pikmin and Star Fox and Donkey Kong and Mario. Not everyone's gonna be a winner. that one was not a winner. But I got to meet him as a part of this experience to promote Star Fox Zero. And even though the game itself was largely forgettable, my experience with Mr. Miyamoto was not forgettable. One, because I was meeting a childhood hero of mine, just this amazing man who I looked up to, loved the work of, and was a god in some ways. So it was unforgettable for that reason. It was also unforgettable because I ghosted him when he tried to give me a high five.
Oh, wow.
The footage I'm about to show you.
Oh my god.
Cannot leave this room.
Oh, okay.
It is don't leave this room. Shut it it down. No, the footage I'm about to show you will be our little secret, all PAX attendees. I was see the cues over here now, so I pointed a bit too early. But it won't leave this room. It's going to be our little secret. So, okay. No one's filming or anything, right? Okay, here we go. Here we go. This is towards the end of the interview. So, thank you for this. Thank you for Star Class. I can't wait to play around with it. Awesome, and thank you, sir.
Damn, cold. Wow.
Oh man. Oh man. You know how they say don't meet your heroes? Don't meet your heroes, ladies and gentlemen, not because they're going to disappoint you or they're going to be different than what you expect or the interaction's going to go differently. No, it's because you're going to do something cringe, and then that cringe is going to haunt you for the rest of your life, and then maybe one day you upload that cringe to YouTube, and then it continues to haunt you for the rest of your life. You don't live it down. To be fair, in my defense, I had shaken his hand a couple minutes earlier because when you're saying goodbye to people, it like carries on. So I get shaking his hand and then translate. Anyway, it was bad. It was bad. It wasn't great. But there was only one other person.
Hilarious. Hilarious.
People ask me all the time what it was like to meet Mr. Miyamoto, right? And the answer there is that he exudes this energy. He exudes a vibrance, like a joy, a sense of like childhood enthusiasm and curiosity. Like it is palpable. I'm sure you've heard the phrase like, oh, they have an X factor. You know, it's something that you can't quite articulate, but you can feel and you can sense. Mr. Miyamoto, he has that, right? You sit in the room and you just are like encapsulated by this like centeredness and self-assuredness. He is one of only two people in my life that I've experienced that with. The other one is this guy. The Pope! And yes, we are going to talk about it. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Why do I do this to myself? Right, why would I give Undertale to the Pope, right? Don't worry, we're going to address it. So for those of you who don't know, or for those of you who successfully blocked it out of your mind, congratulations, thank you. Back in 2016, I was tapped to be one of 12 digital influencers, one of 12 digital creators, to go and meet the Pope at the Vatican as part of this like live international conference where it was like meetings of different communities, right? So it was an all-day event where people were coming in to meet him, ask questions, have small group chats with him, and then eventually to present him with a gift. And as some people know what gift I give him, which we'll talk about. And the thing is about the Pope is people are like, why were you selected? And YouTube's like, oh, because of your educational content that is uplifting and sends a positive message to your fan base.
Oh my god.
Apparently they didn't dig too deep into our watch history. Like, oh yeah, sure, well, game theory guy, that's great, whatever. So there he is, educational content, ladies and gentlemen. There it is, educational content at its finest. So yeah, it was this all-day event where 12 of us from different parts of the world were brought in to have this like meeting of the minds with the Pope, and it started off with like a small little like group chat with him. And then eventually it moved on to this giant amphitheater here where you see all these different leaders from different charity organizations, different communities, different actors and celebrities and things like that, all there to hear and ask questions and do this event with the Pope. It was a big like PR event, right? And just to showcase how weird of a moment in my life this was. Like, so there's me right there. And then literally right down the way, a couple seats over, was George Clooney.
Of course.
Which some people will recognize, which is, I'm impressed, because I'm like, do people even know George Clooney at this point? For those of you who don't know, he is like a heartthrob actor from back in the day. Yeah, he is super successful. He was like the world's sexiest man for a little bit. Always in my heart, obviously. But probably best known in this room as the guy who played Batman in the weird Batman movies where his suit had nipples.
Oh my god.
So I've labeled him right there. You can see me just like 10 seats over from bat nipples. And so one of the things that, as part of the PAX event, a lot of questions were submitted in. We're going to get to a Q&A after I finish kind of my pre-prepared presentation here. But someone submitted a question here. This is from Magic Sword King from Philadelphia. I go to Catholic University. The collective will of all the nuns on campus is telling me to ask you why you gifted the Pope a copy of Undertale and to tell the story of how that happened and what it was like. So, really? The small world, that's crazy. That's wild. But it's one of those things where I can't ignore the collective will of all the nuns, right? That's a key demographic for game theory. I don't know, if in our YouTube analytics, we break it down into like male, female, international nuns. So I can't let down the nun demographic, right? So let's talk about this, right? Well, meeting the Pope was very interesting, right? It was one of those things where, similar to Mr. Miyamoto, he exuded that centeredness, right? He exuded that peace and that calm and this like aura of confidence. It was palpable in that room. It was crazy. Meanwhile, me, all I was exuding was a lot of sweat. Because it was a small hot room with a lot of cameras and a lot of pressure. You're meeting a world leader, and I'm sweating so bad my suit's sweating. So that is what I was exuding during that moment. But Mr. Miyamoto and the Pope Francis, they share other things in common than just beyond like this aura, this vibe that they give out. They also share the unique distinction that I have ghosted both of them.
Wow.
And when I say ghost, dialing me up on the phone, hey, it's the Pope, with my papal text. No, and when I say ghosted, it's not like I missed the papal high five, although that would be hilarious. Just the idea of the Pope like rolling up, being like, "Yo, man, go, let's dap." Like, yeah, investments, let's go. No, this one, I don't know if this was worse. I'll let you be the judge, honestly. So for those of you, who don't know this, the Pope speaks Italian. And so, as a part of this event, we're all kind of gathered around this table, in this small room, and we're all taking turns having questions. And you're getting everything pumped in through a translator in your ear. You have a little earpiece, and everyone's hooked up to an individual translator. And sometimes it's on a massive delay, right? Because the Pope's speaking in real time, it's being translated in real time, and so the delay is anywhere between like 30 seconds to like a minute, sometimes like 15, 20, 30 seconds, minute. It varies, but it can be pretty substantial, right? And so early on in this meeting, in this process, the Pope makes a joke about like, oh, I have to keep my answers short and blah, blah, blah. One of those like PC, politically correct, this is an awkward situation for all of us jokes. And so me, being the try-hard that I am, and wanting to show that I'm the A student, and I'm very attentive, and I'm focused and engaged in this conversation, I'm a very reactive listener, right? So I'm like, good joke, Pope, you're so funny. YouTube React face in full motion. I've been practicing it for all those years, right? And the Pope turns to me with an expression of confusion and a little bit of sadness in his eyes. And I'm like, oh my God, what have I just done? The stomach just drops, right? I'm like, what have I just done? And here's the thing, like, this could have been like a fraction of a second. It could have been 5 minutes. Like, I have no idea how long this look lasted, but it felt like an eternity. And I'm like, what did I just do? What has just happened here? And that's when the translator catches up to what he had just said.
Oh, no.
And what he had just said was a story about small children finding dead bodies on the beaches of Italy.
Wow. Yeah, that would be wise.
Yeah, Pope, go on. Funny one, Pope. Good one, bud. Right? This is the delay. It was the delay, Pope Francis. It was the delay. Yeah, there I am with my stupid YouTuber face. Like, oh yeah, no way, cool. I don't know. I could have like I in my memory, the way I remember this, it was like they were also poverty-stricken orphans on the poverty-stricken orphans on the beaches of Italy, and you're like, no. So anyway, moral of the talk today, if you take nothing else away from what I'm talking about today, it is this. no matter how embarrassed or cringe of a thing that you might have done, don't worry, MatPat has done you one better.
Woo!
Not just one important figure in history, two.
Yeah.
I need to complete the trifecta. Someone get me on the phone with the president or something. I don't know.
Oh God.
Yeah, no way. So anyway, that's the Pope story, and it's funny too because most people, when they hear me bring up the Pope or whatever, you would expect me to be talking about giving him Undertale, which was the thing that the internet had feelings about. To put it lightly, people had feelings about me giving him a Steam code for Undertale. Yeah, I didn't know what console he used, guys. I didn't want to give him something that wasn't going to be compatible. I did get him. I can't give him all the versions of Undertale.
It's kind of ridiculous, yeah.
I mean, he's the Pope, but he's like you know. No, but I don't worry, I got him the Steam code and I printed it up very nicely and I gave him the login instructions and I put it in the sealed envelope that explained why, you know. But the internet had feelings about this. They're like, why would you ever do this? This is crazy, right? To which I say, I feel like the internet maybe lost something in translation on that one. I think when they imagine, giving the Pope a gift, it's like his birthday party or something, right? Where it's like the Pope's opening it up and he's like, oh my gosh, a new crucifix, thank you so much. Oh, this is the rosary I always wanted. This is amazing. Thanks, guys.
Ditch.
I'm gonna bless someone with this. No, like, they were all symbolic gifts, right? You saw that giant room before with the amphitheater. And they're all symbolic gifts to represent individual communities and creators. And so for me, you know, as a representative of the gaming community in a lot of ways, I'm like, hey, a game with the theme of solving problems through peace and nonviolence and different groups coming together and finding happiness amongst themselves, humans and monsters and this and that. Like, that's great. I think that's a huge win for this sort of symbolic event, right? And just for my credit, just so I can justify myself in front of the collective room here, as well as the internet or whoever's streaming it at home, to justify other gifts that were given that day. You know, there were some traditional ones like, oh, here's a tree of peace, or oh, here's a book you can read, I guess. But then there were other ones that were like, hey, here's a surfboard. Because it was one of the, like, they were from Hawaii, right? It's like, oh, we'll give him a surfboard. And so, you know, if you're giving me a hard time for giving the Pope a Steam code to Undertale, you know, the Hawaiian community group that came in was like, yo, 70-year-old Pope man, let's hang 10. Like, you know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. One of the YouTubers in this group actually gave the Pope her self-written autobiography of the trials and tribulations of becoming a beauty influencer.
Funny.
At like 20 years old. You know, so to the man who just dropped a story about poverty-stricken orphans finding dead bodies on the beaches of Italy. And so, you know, like, the struggle was not real, sister. Like, you know. So I stand by the whole Pope Undertale gift thing there. Just want to put it out there, but that answers the question, and I hope that answers the question that was submitted and all the questions that were submitted around it. But the beauty of that whole thing, right, and for as difficult as a time as the internet gave me about it, and for all the misunderstandings and headaches and memes that have come out of this, I felt so validated when 4 years later, this moment happened. It all comes full circle, ladies and gentlemen. It was a similar sort of event with that circus troupe performing for the Pope at another one of these big PR events. And what do you hear? Megalomania by Toby Fox. There it is. So sure, I might have myself a lifetime of cringe and embarrassment coming off of this thing, but at least there were some good memes that came out of it. Also, I've never actually talked about this clip before, but is it just me or does this look like a boss arena for a Dark Souls game? You have like the giant ominous statue looming in the background that you know is going to come to life midway through the battle. You have like the soldier in his full-on uniform, he's gonna attack you midway through, and then you have just like the Pope watching it on from his throne. It's like, I feel like I have to dodge roll my way out of this thing. I'm too encumbered at this point. Anyway, going back and moving a little bit away from the Pope, we talked enough about our papal friend. When I say that, like, wow, there are these big achievements in my life that relate back to gaming, you know, yes, there are things like, whoa, I found my wife, or whoa, I started a business, and we created this amazing channel, this amazing business, and my kid is growing up learning video games, and this and that. But of all of that, biggest achievement, beating Battletoads. That's my humble brag. I don't get to flex the like I beat Battletoads card that often, but I felt like this was a room that would appreciate it. You know, no, and obviously I'm joking, but I'm also not joking. All throughout middle school and high school, like for the first couple of years of high school, I would take summers, weekend nights, and just dedicate myself to grinding away at Battletoads on the NES, and it was terrible, and I hated my life, and I got so mad, but I got through it. And then I did it, and I'm like, yeah, I can do anything. The world is my oyster. I can conquer it all, which gives me such an incredible sense of satisfaction. Now, anytime I see a listicle from BuzzFeed being like, oh, the top 10 hardest games of all time, and I'm like, I beat number 8. That's great. I have to work my way up to Silver Surfer now.
Oh God.
Like, almost. Anyone else ever beat Battletoads, by the way?
No.
Yeah, right? Like there's like 5 of you in this giant room, 6 of you. Yeah, that right? It's hard. It's brutal, right? Yeah, it's terrible. So anyway, the other thing that I wanted to call out here, and again going back to this theme of video games being really instrumental in not just big moments in my life, things that I've done, people that I've met, but also just influencing me as an individual. Episode 3 of Game Theory is about this game called Illusion of Gaia. It's a Super Nintendo game, action-adventure RPG, pretty bog-standard stuff. You go around the world, you compete in a bunch of dungeons, you level up, and eventually you save the world, right, from alien destruction. Pretty unremarkable, I think for a lot of people, largely went under the radar. But this one game fundamentally shifted so much about who I am as a person and what I've grown up to do in my life, right? So first off, this was the game that first introduced me to Ronnie, who was my first partner on Game Theory. He was our editor for a long time, and he and I bonded. He reached out to me when he saw episode 3 go up, and he's like, oh my gosh, you know Illusion of Gaia? I didn't think anyone knew that game. And from there, we hopped on the phone for like 3 hours, just like talking about complete strangers, talking about and bonding over this game, and you know, that was such an instrumental, foundational person and relationship in my life. But then also, not only did it introduce me to people who would be so impactful to me as a person, but it also came with this really cool thing. So Illusion of Gaia was a little bit different. And any game developers out there, please take note, because I think this is so cool. It wasn't just, oh, go to Dungeon X, the grass dungeon, and then move on to the ice dungeon and the fire dungeon, whatever. Every location, or at least a lot of the key locations in the game, were themed around and inspired by real-world locations, right? So, and the game itself came packaged with a map that mapped out where you were going and a little bit of the history of each of those locations. So for the first time in my childhood life, I made that connection of like, oh, video games in the real world can interact. And I learned something from this, which would then domino to eventually become game theory. This idea of what if I fuse real life learning with a video game? And it started with that map. And not only did that map influence the projects that I would work on, but it gave me a life goal that I'm still working on pursuing to this very day, where I made it a personal goal to visit every single one of those locations that you play in the game. So that way I could experience those same things. I could have my own video game adventure in real life. And at this point, we've done all of them but one, actually. I'm down to my final one. But, you know, in the game you visit the Great Wall of China. And so Steph and I went to China and saw the Forbidden City and the Great Wall. You go to Cambodia to explore the ruins of Angkor Wat, which I had never heard of before. I would only have known about it through this game. But it's this amazing temple complex buried in the jungles of Cambodia. And you feel like Indiana Jones when you go there, because all of these ancient ruins are grown over with these giant trees where the root systems kind of weave through everything, and there's giant Olmec faces everywhere. It's unbelievable. It is the closest you will ever feel to being an adventure in real life, and I got to experience it, and I learned about it through this game that I played when I was like 10, and it's stuck with me ever since. You know, we went to Egypt and Petra and the Middle East because we wanted to experience the Great Pyramids. This right here, this is the Nazca Lines in the middle of Peru. Again, one of those very off the beaten track sorts of places where people don't know about it, tends not to appear on listicles, but there are these ancient paintings that exist out in the desert that have been undisturbed for hundreds of years, and you kind of have to drive out to the middle of emptiness of Peru, like just middle of nowhere kind of, and you hop in a prop plane, tiny like 3-seater plane, and you fly up and they do a little aileron roll, because not a barrel roll, do an aileron roll, and you're like, oh my gosh, and you're holding on for dear life, and you're trying to take photos, and you're trying not to puke, so you can see this from up in the air. And again, I only learned about it through video games, right? And the great thing about it is, Illusion of Gaia, and that game that I played back then, influenced my intellectual curiosity. It inspired me to explore and learn more about the world around me. And now, that inspired me, and now I can pass that along to Ali. And so we did our most recent one last year, where we went to some Incan ruins to show him that, and inspire that same curiosity in him. And so there's one left. We have to do Easter Island, and then I've completed my Illusion of Gaia World Tour, which is amazing.
Wow.